Evening message on April 28, 2022. Don't be obsessed to use the mind. Otherwise, there will be a lot of karma and karmic difficulties of mental karma. That has to be all the same, is not the mind. That which is not the mind, that which has nothing to do with the mind, uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself. In this way, it will purify all the karmic difficulties through words, thoughts and actions. Where it's from the usage without purification, always enjoying the usage on and on. Karma through words, thoughts and actions, physical, verbal and mental karma. Only just mental karma is in various forms, from seeing, from looking, without purification. The mental karma within seeing, knowing, recalling, fabrications. Mental karma within feelings, emotions. Don't be obsessed to use the mind on and on, to use mental process on and on. Because there is no balance in the purification. Therefore, there is karma and karmic difficulties. One has to be in difficulties through the same old patterns of the mind's opinions and meanings, all the delusion within seeing and knowing, all the same old patterns of opinions and meanings. This is karma and karmic difficulties as usual, always coming back in the same way. Even using the yan, the insight is considered as the knowing. Whether it is knowing tangibly or intangibly is mental karma, karma from the knowing. And the karmic difficulties from it is what? Is the delusion in knowing that is going on continuously. Being deluded to knowing, deluded knowing. There is only just contact and clashes. There is just hurting and harming. That is the difficulties. There is just senses, there is just clashes. This is karmic difficulties, which is the trouble. Each time there is a clash, is a difficulty that is happening. There is Vedana and hindrances. Don't be obsessed to use the mind. Then disregarding will happen on its own. However, one must listen. The disregard that is not relevant to the disregard itself, one has to listen to it because it's the terminology that is by the foundation of the unobstruction within itself. It will not aggravate further. Disregard even from the disregard itself. Don't be obsessed with the mental process on and on. Not to be engrossed with just seeing, knowing, recalling, thinking, worries, criticizing, analyzing. Don't be obsessed with doubts and hesitations and questions. Don't be obsessed with aiming towards anything. Don't be engrossed with being like wordlings, only clashing, practicing only just hurting and harming. Being obsessed with just projecting the mind, hurting and harming. Disregard, even from the disregard itself, this will purify the hurt and harm self. Because it creates Vedana and hindrances. That's why, how can it not be called hurting and harming? Each time there is clashes, looking, seeing and knowing, thinking, each time there is only just hindrances and Vedana. This is called contacts and clashes within oneself and all things. How can it not be called hurting and harming in such a way? Being obsessed with just significance and meanings and involvement, this is the one that creates hurting and harming. It's not helpful. There is only the samutai that does it. Uninvolved with the disregard itself. Uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself. Don't be engrossed with usage of the mind, knowing, seeing. Don't be engrossed with just thinking and recalling or aiming mentally with projecting of the mind, obligation of the mind. It's not about anything within the uninvolved itself. Disregard is not about anything within itself. In this way, it will be called truly unwinding and releasing to help one another. That is blessing directly to the point with the essence, the true essence. You form up the body and the mind. Looking, seeing and knowing is always there. You just have to make a conclusion to purify it. Don't be obsessed just using it. It exists in the way as a medium for blessing. Don't be obsessed with just using it and pushing it on and on. Make a conclusion through the essence of the enlightenment to purify it simultaneously. It is the medium to help give ending for samsara. This body and mind, one moment of the knowing, is a medium to help give ending for samsara. Let it be in such a way. Don't be deludedly practicing in whatever ways again, knowing or not knowing. This is not to form up and being deluded to it. This body and mind is formed up as a medium for samsara already. So just make a conclusion through the enlightenment, cutting deluded knowing to purify it directly, instantly. It's not about anything within the uninvolved itself to be given all the same with everything. This is not to be engrossed with practicing the body and the mind in this way and that way, practicing knowing, seeing, thinking, recalling. This is being deluded to progression and declination on and on. It's difficult, turning into karmic difficulties into the future. Don't be engrossed with using the mind, with insight, knowing, seeing. Don't be obsessed to use titi, opinions and meanings. With these, there will be purification of the extinction and the emptiness. and enable it.
มันจะได้ดับล้างว่างล้างกันอยู่แล้วกันอยู่แล้วกันอยู่แล้วเป็น
This will enable the purification of the extinction and the emptiness which is already there in its nature. Don't be obsessed just using it.
ไม่ใช่สิ่งเสพติด
This is not drugs addict
ติดการใช้
to be addicted to the usage of the mind.
แต่อนุบาล
From the kindergarten
มหาลัย
till
ติดในตัวหลง
elementary school and universities is just being deluded to the fixation of knowing, being deluded to it and deludedly using it further.
ก็เลยมีแต่กรรมโลกกรรม
Therefore, there is just karma and karma, karmic difficulties and karmic difficulties.
วิบากในความคิดวิบากในความเห็น
Karmic difficulties within opinions and meanings, within insight, knowing and seeing,
วิบากในนานาจิตตัง
within all types of minds.
มีแต่วิบาก
There are only just karmic difficulties, circling and circling and circling.
มีวนเวียน
The tithi, opinions and meanings, circling and circling. Insights, opinions and meanings, looking, seeing and knowing, which is just rebirth, circling on and on.
สิ่งที่ไม่ใช่จิตนะ
That which is not the mind,
สิ่งที่ไม่ใช่จิต
to be given all the same with everything.
เจ็บเป็นมัวหลง
This is not to be obsessed with the mind,
มัวหลงแต่อะไรใน
being deludedly sustaining the mind on and on. What is there within the mind to be sustained as such?
สิ่งที่มันไม่ใช่แม้กระทั่งไม่ใช่
No is not even know itself.
ไม่เกี่ยวตัวไม่เกี่ยวเอง
Uninvolved within the uninvolved itself.
ใช่ตัวไม่ใช่เอง
No is not even know itself.
ไม่ตัวไม่เองเลย
No, the know itself. Disregard the disregard itself, all the same with everything, so that there will be purification of the extinction and the emptiness, all the same.
จะไปเกาะเอาไว้ลูก
This is not about clinging on to it. Let there be releasing and unwinding to help one another,
จะไปเกาะเอาไว้
not just clinging on to it.
จะไปทรงเอาไว้
This is not about maintaining.
อนัตตาไปทรงมันได้ยังไง
All things are anicca and anatta. How can there be the maintaining of it? The maintaining itself is also anicca and anatta in itself. That which is maintained also anicca and anatta in itself. The clinging itself is anicca and anatta. That which is clung to also anicca and anatta in itself. Being obsessed to use anicca, to cling on to the anicca. When is it that is going to be ending the delusion? Being obsessed to maintain the anatta. When is it going to be ended, the delusion as such? The mind itself is anatta. That which is sustaining the mind is also anatta. When is it there gonna be the ending of the delusion and the craziness? The practice itself also anicca. That which is practiced is also anicca. Being obsessed to use anicca to practice the anicca, when is it that is going to end such craziness and delusion? The fixation is anicca. That which is fixated upon is also anicca. This is the engrossment of anicca, clinging to the anicca. When is it going to be ending this delusion? Disregard even from the disregard itself.
ไม่ก็ไม่ใช่แม้กระทั่งไม่เอง
The disregard is not the disregard itself.
ตรัสรู้ให้ทุกพุทธร
This truth has been enlightened in every Buddha era. Therefore, don't be
ทำเป็นโมหะด้านทุลัง
stubbornly persisting with your delusion.
ยึดอะไรได้สักอย่างแล้วตัวยึดเอง
Is there anything that can be fixated to? The fixation itself is anicca. That which is fixated upon is anicca. The anicca always persisting in itself on and on. Disregard. Don't be obsessed to stubbornly persisting. Disregard even from the disregard itself. Disregard even from the disregard itself. Don't be engrossed with using the body, the mind, or verbal. This is only the formed up things, temporary formed up things. Thinking that is truly one's own mind, one's own body. They are existing temporarily, forming up temporarily. The conditions that are formed up temporarily, that's all. So don't be obsessed to practice it. Don't be obsessed to use it. Make a conclusion through the enlightenment, the essence of the enlightenment towards samsara simultaneously. Knowing that follows the nature is already enough in the delusion. When there are even more instruments to help one being deluded, it's going to be further. The delusion itself is anicca and anatta in itself. That is that which is being deluded also. Anicca and anatta in itself. This is the anicca that is being deluded to the anicca itself. The anatta that is being deluded to anatta itself. If unable to uninvolve with the disregarding itself, one will not end being deluded, being crazy, being deluded to the body, the mind, verbal, and all things, on and on. If unable to uninvolve even within the unvolved itself, then it's impossible for oneself to end the delusion. If unable to disregard, it will be endless in the delusion, always stubbornly persisting onwards. How can the know be practiced? How can there be the delusion in practicing the titi, the yan, the insights, the knowing? How can there be the practice within the anicca, within its conditions? Disregard even from the disregard itself, all the same with everything.
มันมีก็มีไปที่เห็นที่มันมีอยู่แล้วกายจิตเนี่ยแต่ไม่ต้อง
body
เจริญมัน
and the mind that exist, let them be without trying to practice anything upon them.
รู้มีก็มีไป
The knower is there, the seer is there, the mind is there. There is no need to practice it. There is no need to overlay it. Disregard even from the disregard itself through it instantly. There is a fixation in the practice itself. That's why it becomes samsara of vibhak, back and forth, onwards. There is no need to practice the mind in what ways again. The mind is anatta, the mind is anicca. It's just formed up and it's bygone in itself. That's it. It's temporary. This is not to make anything out of it. This is using it overwhelmingly without purification. Therefore, the vibhak will follow. The karmic difficulties will follow. Let's purify for samsara instantly. Don't be obsessed with stars. Don't be obsessed and engrossed with stars through the insights, looking, seeing and knowing within opinions and meanings, within thoughts. Let's purify it instantly through Nirodha and Nibbana. Disregard, even from the disregard itself, all the same with everything. Uninvolved, even within the involved itself, all the same. No fixation, even the non-fixation itself, all the same. No grasping, even the non-grasping itself, all the same. Don't overlay the disregarding. Don't overlay the seeing and the knowing. Retreat from looking, seeing and knowing a lot more, so that it will enable to purify the assume up of the mind. Otherwise, there will be no balance. It will turn into karma and karmic difficulties, hindrances and vedana accumulated on and on. Retreat much more from the disregarding. That is the uninvolved with the disregarding. That is that which is not about anything within the disregarding itself. Retreat from the uninvolved a lot more. That is called nothing is within the uninvolvement itself.
จีกรรม
with thoughts and actions,
ที่ใช้กับอะไร
which is the karma that has been used within anything within physical world towards the graces, the triple gems, the grace of fathers and mothers, those we owe gratitude to towards teachers, gurus, arahants, Pajjeka Buddhas, the Mahabodhisattvas, from the first great Buddha onwards, and all the Buddhas within the universal elemental worlds, physical worlds, all the delusion to use words, thought and actions towards that which is not about anything, until it becomes karma and karmic difficulties collectively altogether, since the past is unable to not use thoughts, body and mind. Ahosi, Ahosi. The expectations overlay within body, mind, form and formlessness until it's become addiction to it. This is worse than drug addicts. Being addicted to drugs, worse than that. That which has nothing to do with expectations or any settings or not setting. That which has nothing to do with being obligated or not. Uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself. With this, it will purify the addiction. Being addicted to the body, the mind, the verbal, words, form and formlessness. Being addicted to senses and sense perceptions. Addictive. Disregard is not relevant to itself. Share it all the same, so that there is no discrimination. Let there be the sharing of Nirodha and Nibbana evenly, without discrimination, no obstruction, no fixation, all the same. This is not in the way of having some fixation, some attachment or detachment. What is that? That which has nothing within attachment or detachment, to be shared all the same. To be stuck with just attachment or detachment, there is always discrimination within viewpoints, opinions and meanings of attachment or detachment, of fixation or no fixation. always
ที่
discrimination.
มันไม่เกี่ยวกับติดไม่เกี่ยวกับหลุดมันเหมือนกันไป
Let there be that which has nothing to do with attachment or detachment all the same.
เพราะอะไรเล่าเพราะว่ามันไม่เกี่ยวมันก็ทำไม่เกี่ยว
Because
เอง
this is uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself.
มันไม่เกี่ยวมันก็ทำไม่
This
เกี่
is
ยว
the
เอง
essence.
เป็น
If one is enabled, then it will totally purify all tithi.
มันหลงสร้างความต่างไม่
Not to be deluded, create discriminations or differentiations at all.
จะล้างทิฏฐิให้
It will purify all types of tithi totally. Not to be engrossed with discrimination or differentiations.
คิดว่าไม่มัวแต่เห็น
Not to
ว่า
be
ไม่มัวแต่
engrossed with thoughts, understanding delusively.
ไม่มัวแต่คิดว่าถูกไม่มัว
Not
แต่คิด
to
ว่า
think that this is right or wrong.
ไม่มัวแต่คิดว่าใช่ไม่มัว
Not
แต่
to
คิดว่า
think
ไม่
that
ใช่
this is it is as it is or not.
ให้ก็เพราะว่ามันไม่เกี่ยวมันก็ไม่เกี่ยวเอง
Purify the tithi because it's uninvolved even within the uninvolved itself. That's why it can purify the tithi.
มัวแต่ได้ผี
To
ว่า
be
ใช่
engrossed with
ใช่
tithi
ก็หลง
regarding
เรื่อย
right or wrong, yes or no, is going to be onwards in
ๆ
delusion.
ทิฏฐินั่นเอง
This is called being deluded to tithi, opinions and meanings. If disregarding already, retreat furthermore from it. Uninvolved with the disregarding. Nothing is within the disregarding. Don't disregard in the way of sinking in the stillness or indifference. That is not truly disregarding. This is disregarding externally but not internally. Sinking in the stillness and indifference is not yet disregarding from the internal. It disregards the external but not inward. True disregard has to disregard from itself. Not to be engrossed with disregarding from something on and on until turning into sinking in the stillness and indifference. Disregarding internally has to be disregard from the disregard itself. Disregard itself is unable, then the discard will transform into stillness and indifference on and on. It will become realm of existence on and on. Disregard has nothing to do with itself. With these, there will not be a delusion to be stuck with the realm of stillness or indifference. The Nijjang has the stillness or indifference. There's always shifting and changing in every particle. How can there be stillness or indifference? How can one fall into that state?
ไปหลงเป็นอุเบกขาเนี่ยตั้งแต่ตอนไหน
When is there being deluded to the equanimity?
ปฏิเสธสังสารวัฏใช่ไหม
When one already reject samsara, rejecting suffering,
ปฏิเสธอนิจจัง
rejecting the anicca, right?
แต่ไม่ปฏิเสธตัวปฏิเสธ
But not rejecting the rejection itself.
ไม่แม้กระทั่งไม่
Disregard, even from the disregard itself, has nothing to do with being still or not, being indifferent or not.
ที่มันไม่อยู่แล้วก็ไม่ใช่อะไร
The disregard that is there just give no meanings and significance involvement to it.
มันจะได้เต็มที่
Then it will be
เปลี่
absolute,
ยนไป
without boundaries. Just take it easy, but not think in it.